for me, it's not just about the next election, it's about protecting
Right
people
now.
now. And I think if we organize and inspire people to say, if you speak out and get three Republicans out of the over 200 of them in Congress to break with Musk and Trump, we can actually stop the bad things that are happening to people right now.
Hmm.
That's what's inspiring people.
Hello, friends, and thank you for joining us on Charting the Way Forward, where we deliver research informed strategy and intelligence from across the Democratic coalition. This podcast is produced by Way to Win, where we aim to upend politics as usual. I'm your host, Kerry, and today I am joined by
Maddie Medved. I work at Way to Win on our narrative work, specifically leading all of our creator work and digital strategies.
Kristian Ramos, advisor to Way to Win and Valiente Action Fund, and proud Southwestern Mexican American.
All right. Today, we've got a fantastic interview coming up that Maddie and Kristian conducted with Representative Greg Casar of Texas, who, at just 35 years old, also chairs the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which counts roughly 100 members. The congressman shares some insights about the role he views the Progressive Caucus playing in the current political landscape and how Democrats can fight back against the Trump Musk regime. Casar also joined Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for the final leg of their Fight the Oligarchy tour, with stops in Las Vegas, Denver, and Tucson, among other cities. And that tour was part of the inspiration for this episode, in which we are focusing on Democrats starting to find their voice and tap into the energy that's out there. Citizens hungry to see someone fighting for them against the destruction Republicans are now wreaking on the government, the economy, the country, and our way of life. Um, Bernie and AOC drew tens of thousands of people to their anti-oligarchy tour. In Denver, more than 30,000 people turned out to hear the pair speak together. Larger than any crowd, this is really notable to me, larger than any crowd that Bernie drew in his two presidential campaigns. And just like something to note is neither of them are running for office, but they are rallying to save the country, and people are responding to it. In some ways, Bernie's attack on the rich and powerful, when you listen to it, isn't really new or fresh messaging for him. It's just hitting different now that the villains and their plundering is clear as day. As Senator Bernie Sanders told NPR, when I talked about oligarchy over the years, I think for some people it was kind of an abstraction. But now he added, you have to be blind not to see that what we have today is a government of the billionaires, by the billionaires, and for the billionaires. So, with that, we're going to discuss several clips featuring Democrats who are starting to tap into the energy of voters who are looking for fighters, looking for people who will stand firm against Trump, Republicans, and the destruction of our country. And first up is AOC in Arizona. And just to note that when we listen to these clips, we're going to let them run just a touch longer than might be standard for other podcasts or certainly for cable TV. So just bear with us. We're trying to give you a flavor of, what they really said and not just like fit them into some little box. Kristian, I know you wanted to queue up some things for people to be thinking about as we listen to this clip. Did you want to jump in here and say something?
Yeah. Really important. I just wanted to give context for what we're about to see. And the context here is Trump has just had his worst week since he became president yet. Knock on wood. I hope there's more to come in terms of him having horrible weeks. But let's look at Monday, Signalgate. You don't really need to go much more into that. That is a disaster that continues to bear fruit. Tuesday, the Dems flipped a Trump plus 15 county, never elected a Dem ever in Pennsylvania. Wednesday, the it's clear that the Republican effort to gut Social Security is a real thing, right? There was that Washington Post story that really outlined how they're planning to gut and privatize Social Security. Thursday, he pulls Stefanik's nomination because he does not want to leave the majority to chance, right? He doesn't think that they can refill that seat, so he keeps her around because he doesn't want to lose his majority. Friday, consumer confidence plummets to record low levels, right? Under the Biden administration, consumer confidence in your personal finances was always pretty high, right? People were not happy about the economy with their personal finances they felt good about. For the first time in a long time, consumers do not view their personal finances in a favorable light. That means they stop spending money. That means that we're probably looking at some sort of recession. Saturday, 4 MAGA amendments in deep red Louisiana fail. This is the reddest of the reddest states, and that stuff died. Okay, that brings us to Tuesday. We have these Florida elections tonight, or well, they're coming up Tuesday, and we're going to have much closer than expected elections in Florida. And to put things in perspective, those elections, which are going to be super close, would be like if Democrats had to defend AOC's district in New York, which Harris won by 36 points, or 60, I'm sorry, 65 points.
Big
That's
difference.
the margin. That's the margin that Trump won in this district that is going to be very close tonight. So he is having a horrible time. All that is to say, that is why it's amazing that AOC is in Arizona. Remember at the top, I said I was a proud Mexican from the Southwest. I never thought I would see national Democrats holding huge rallies in Arizona with record number support. And so what you're about to hear is really inspiring to me on a number of levels because it shows that Democrats actually care and are in Arizona playing to win there. So without further ado, please roll the tape.
Well, without further ado, I just want to now I want to add that we are recording on Tuesday. So by the time you all listen to this, you will know the answers to, how close Democrats came in Florida, whether or not they flipped anything, and also this Wisconsin Supreme Court election and what happened there, whether or not Elon Musk, just putting like 25-30 million dollars into trying to buy that seat actually worked. So anyway, now without further ado, let's roll the clip and listen to AOC.
Because Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security were promises that we as a people have made to each other about the kind of country we are and the kind of society we want to live in. And I don't know about you, Arizona, but I want to live in an America that guarantees health care to every person. I want to live in an America that has a living wage for every person. I want to live in America where you have free speech to express yourself and not be afraid of getting put on a list or deported. But these promises that we've made, they are not promises from politicians to the people, or they're not charity from billionaires to everyday Americans. They are promises we have made to each other. Neighbor to neighbor, friend to friend, teacher to student, family member to family member. That we want to live in a society that is not depraved, not every person for themselves, but all of us standing together. This is the promise that we make to each other as Americans.
All right. Maddie, do you want to take a stab at that, especially given your insights about the creator space and what's hitting?
Yes. That is one clip of many that were all over the place on TikTok and across platforms. So overall, what we're seeing, I think, from this tour is they're just really amazing, organic, on the ground moments that are being amplified online, which is crucial. I think we just need to continue to create the digital wake and the digital footprint of these moments and make sure people are hearing from our leaders who are emerging and what kind of messages they're pushing out. Loved this clip. The other clip that was really doing well is now this was clipping a bunch of stuff that when they like to call us radical, I believe it's common sense. I think that's something that especially on TikTok was really landing with people of a lot of these messages that she said in this clip that we just listened to, but these issues that she's talking about, she's deemed radical, they're deemed radical, and it's common sense that I think most people really resonate with. And we're seeing that with the engagement that these clips are and these messages are getting online. So super exciting stuff. And we need to continue to do and see more of it, which we will. There's more stops coming up. So I'm excited to see what comes out of there.
Kristian, did you want to jump in here on AOC or anything that's struck you?
Again, I just think I've said on this show for a while, this election, 2026 cycle is probably going to come down to the economy and healthcare, right? And healthcare through the prism of the economy, because if you're taking away people's healthcare, they're not going to have the ability to pay their bills and so on and so forth. And Republicans are taking away people's healthcare to give tax cuts to billionaires. And I think she is making these really important arguments to these audiences that maybe would not hear this stuff. And so I just think it's really important work, and the digital amplification piece right now. People are mad at everything right now. I think for Democrats, we have to make sure that we're pointing them in the right direction, which is towards Elon Musk, MAGA, Donald Trump, and congressional Republicans.
That's right. Leadership abhors a vacuum. And right now, there's a little bit of a vacuum in leadership on the Democratic side. And so if we don't fill the space, Republicans are going to fill that space. And they're going to, fill it with deflection, right? And try to point fingers at other people for why people are going to start feeling real pain in their lives. I loved her framing of these are promises of Medicare and Social Security, Medicaid. These are promises we've made to each other. I loved that framing. So let's see. There was something else I wanted to say, but it's gone. It'll come back. Anyway, let's head to we're gonna kick over to Jon Ossoff, Senator Jon Ossoff of Georgia, who's mounting a re-election bid for U.S. Senate. He'll be up next year. Here he is last week in Atlanta, joined by Senator Raphael Warnock in what was billed as, quote, a rally for our republic, unquote. So let's listen to him and then talk about it on the other side.
And see, this is why things don't work for ordinary people. It's not because of trans kids or woke college students. It's not. It's not because of our new arch enemy, Canada. The corruption is why you pay a fortune for prescriptions. The corruption is why your insurance claim keeps getting denied. The corruption is why hedge funds get to buy up all the houses in your neighborhood and Congress doesn't do anything about it. See, this is why so many have lost faith in our system. Because the system really is rigged. But Trump's not unrigging it. He's re-rigging it for himself.
Okay. So I just wanted to jump in here after looking at that clip. I honestly, so I spent 5 years covering Barack Obama, and, all of his speeches and like everything he did for 5 years on the 2008 campaign trail, and then also at the White House so I looked at this clip, and I'm not saying Jon Ossoff looks like Obama. I'm saying the ordering of this just struck me as being very Obama-esque. Do you remember how Obama had that whole shtick about when he was campaigning about Republicans and how they drove the car into the ditch? And once someone drives the car into the ditch, you don't give them the keys back, right? And he would get everybody kind of laughing about that, and then he would kind of chuckle at it himself. And I feel like this is a similar setup where Jon Ossoff says, you don't like he delivers this punchline about Canada being our arch enemy. Everybody sort of laughs at that. And because it's preposterous, right? Canadians are, notoriously like the nicest people on earth. And then he sort of chuckles at it himself. And then he comes back after everyone's he's got the crowd in and they are, they're bought into the joke that he's telling. Everybody's kind of in on it. And then he delivers the real like zinger, which is the corruption is why you pay a fortune for your prescription, right? It's the corruption. It's the corruption. So I like couldn't help but be reminded of the way Obama used to set these things up where he'd like tell a little bit of a joke. Everybody would be in on it. He would chuckle himself and then he would like deliver some sort of zinger about Republicans. Um, does anybody else want to say a little something here about Ossoff?
Yeah, I agree with that comparison. I think aside from them both being, very dashing, they are very charismatic. And I noticed that too, the little like jokiness. It's relatable, the way they move, the way they talk. So love that. And again, I think a common theme throughout this episode is like really like looking at new and up and coming and young Democratic leaders. And we'll talk about that more as we talk about the congressman we interviewed today. But yeah, there's just that general like way to break or unpacking like his leadership, his speaking and how he's resonating with people. But I also just want to double click and emphasize on the message itself and the way that, he does frame it in this status threat way of talking about, stop, we shouldn't be blaming trans people and immigrants for these issues. It's the corruption, like you said. So overall, 10 out of 10 for me.
My only note is on the joke about Canada. I think is like perfect for right now because my sleeper hit of the summer all cycle has been these insane tariffs, these taxes that they're putting on working Americans. And that was very Obama-esque that he sort of alluded to the fact that we're in this war with Canada, who's our second biggest trading partner after Mexico. And so I feel like that is very Obama-esque because I think it is important and is sort of underlines with a single phrase how absurd and stupid the economic policies of this administration are right now.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. 10 out of 10 for everyone. For Maddie, for Kristian, and for John Ossoff on that. All right. Let's move on. We're going to switch it up just a little bit here. Originally I went out looking for, rally clips and things like that, but then I just couldn't help but, last night, Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey started talking on the floor at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's roughly 2 p.m. Eastern now as we're recording this, and I'm pretty sure he's still out there. Have you guys seen an update?
I think he's still, yeah.
I think he's still talking. So like over 16 hours he's been talking with, a couple of questions and things like that. He's had a little bit of help here and there, but he's been talking for roughly 16 hours. And he's on the floor of the Senate. He's delivering a long and full-throated rebuke of the havoc and pain that Trump, Musk, and the Republicans are wreaking on the country. And I wanted to switch it up and just sort of play a clip of him. And this is sort of a mashup of something of a situation that he's talking about. So there are some edits in here, some cuts. I mean, when someone's talking for 16 hours, they have a lot of time to fill, so they just kind of keep going on and they get on tangents. But he's talking about this letter he received from a woman in Wisconsin who's been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, tragically. And again, a note that as we listen to this, it goes for roughly 2 minutes. We might cut it down just a touch, but there's going to be some silent moments here that would make sense if you were watching it because it's Cory Booker sort of collecting himself, composing himself due to the fact that his father suffered from the same disease. And so if there's a silent moment, you haven't lost us. It's actually just a moment that he's pausing to sort of collect himself. And then we'll come back on the other side and talk a little bit about this clip too.
My name is Kayana Spooner, and I live in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. I'm 63 years old. My husband, Joe, and I have 5 children and 3 grandchildren. We felt that we were living the American dream until one day in 2012, I know this personally with my dad, and I feel for you, Ms. Spooner. So one day in 2012, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's is a degenerate Parkinson's disease is a degenerative brain disease that progresses over time. Sorry, I'm thinking about my dad. It is unrelenting and affects motor and nerve processes. Loss of benefits will have a direct and daily effect on me and my family as we navigate the medical needs we will be facing. And I will need the security of a generous society to care for me. Millions of others join me there. Please, Senator Booker, please protect my Social Security. I just thank God that my mom had the resources to take care of my dad. And I watched that degenerative disease take from his life for 20 years and how much it cost, the thousands of dollars it cost my mom to take care of him. I know so many Americans who are not powerful, they're not rich. I know so many Americans who live in fear every day that one little thing will happen to them that will destabilize their financial well-being. I tell you, I am going to fight for your Social Security. I'm going to fight to protect the agency. I'm going to fight against unnecessary cuts that hurt the service it gives. And today into tomorrow, I'm going to stand as long as I can. As long as I can, I'm going to stand and read stories like this because you are seen, you are heard. Your voices are more important than any of the 100 of us.
Okay, that was it's super moving. He gets angry towards the end. It's a super moving clip. I think he's speaking there for hundreds of thousands of Americans, but also when he talks about Social Security more generally, millions, tens of millions of Americans who are worried about this. And at one point, when I was looking through clips, he was talking about people who had just written to him and said, you know, I just lie. Seniors, these are seniors who have Social Security, who are saying to him, I just lie awake at night now, fearful of what will happen. Like this is their sole income, basically. And this is what Republicans are getting. You know, I've been teeing up basically for the past couple months. I mean, they've been teeing it up for like decades, but have been the misinformation about the waste, fraud, and abuse in Social Security, which is actually one of the soundest government services we have. It's been studied over and over again. They've been teeing that up for months with a lot of misinformation, disinformation in order to say, well, it's got to be cut. So with that, Maddie, do you want to take a crack at maybe from a creative perspective or just, personal insights on this one?
Yes. There's a lot, and obviously we're still living it, so there's a lot still unfolding, but we have a chat of over 100 creators with over 100 million followers who are talking about this right now, who are amplifying it. And I think it's just very telling of how much of an appetite there is for Democrats to display strong and meaningful opposition. So currently, like some of the data of like the social listening we're looking at is he's currently the third most talked about political figure right now in the last 24 hours. Trump and Musk, unfortunately, are 1 and 2. But yeah, almost a million engagements so far. And then the posts amplifying this filibuster have earned at least 7 million views. So all that data is still coming in. So this is clearly a move that's working. He's been streaming it on TikTok. I believe it wasn't on C-SPAN. That was one of our creators said that. And that it was really just streaming on online platforms, which is really exciting to see platforms like that prioritized. And I'm excited to kind of see once it closes and hopefully he breaks the record and all of the good things, but how it's received and also kind of really seeing the final take of all of the numbers of the reach of this moment, because it is historic and it really should be it should be on people's radars. And I think the way that it's been prioritized online and digitally is clearly showing that like this is how you get reach. This is how you reach people, and this is how you reach these constituencies that you want to. And I think even beyond that, just the way he is prioritizing storytelling and how, what's happening is really impacting people's lives and it's having material impacts on people's lives. Those are the messages that really hit, especially online that we've seen. So seeing this kind of all come together is exciting, and I think it should be there should be more of it. Again, people really want to see leaders, they want to see meaningful opposition, and I think this is what that's doing.
So I think it's really powerful for a number of reasons. Um, Number one, the actual record holder for the longest filibuster ever is Strom Thurmond.
Mhm.
He was rallying against the Civil Rights Act for 24 hours and 18 minutes.
Wow.
So to have Cory Booker now out there, doing this, fighting for people's health care and for people's economic well-being, I think is really powerful, right? In the context of history, and that we have technology out there able to capture it and send it everywhere, really. I mean, and so I never watched C-SPAN growing up. I could give a shit less about C-SPAN today, probably. But that
I
you have
watch I
creators,
watch C-SPAN for the callers mainly, just for the callers.
but that you have creators and so on and so forth that are lifting this stuff up and putting it out there. I think that's really important right now and very special.
Yeah.
Yeah, agree, agree. So, okay, with that, we are super pleased to bring you the insights of Congressman Greg Casar of Texas. Do you know what district he represents, Kristian? I should have looked it up in doing my due diligence, and I didn't.
He's he's Austin. I want to say CD6. I'm pretty sure.
Okay,
Um,
you can look for that in a second. One thing I wondered before, because Kristian and Maddie very ably conducted this interview in my absence, and I appreciate that very much. And I just wondered if either one of you had anything that kind of stuck out to you without like giving away the plot on the very best answer he gave or something like that, but stuck out to you about the representative.
Sure, I'll go first. Again, without really talking deeply about what we talk about, I think just generally, again, tying back to this theme of leadership in our party and the way that the audiences are really looking for meaningful opposition. And I think this tour is that. And I think hearing from leaders, young leaders specifically, um, who are out there on the ground, but also in online spaces, is really resonating with people, and it's what people really ha are thirsty for. And I think Representative Kasar really hits that, and I'm excited at the current momentum that he's getting, and I can't wait to see kind of what else comes for him because I think he's a real star, and I think is someone we should continue to uplift as a leader in this party.
so it's actually the 35th district
Okay,
of
thank you.
Texas.
I was
I was,
hoping
yeah,
you would
I was,
fact check. You would fact check. That's good.
I would
35th
fact check myself.
district.
So I think what's really exciting about the congressman is, again, proud Latino, Mexican American from the Southwest. He's a leader of the Progressive Caucus, and that he owns his identity in that role, but is also able to manage a caucus of 111 members
Wow.
in Congress is really cool. And I certainly, again, I didn't really see the Southwest having that role of leadership. And the oligarchy tour is pretty, the anti-oligarch tour is very cool in that it is two Latinos, right? AOC and Greg Casar with Bernie Sanders and out there talking to communities that we don't really get to talk to. So
Did he hit every stop? I kind of thought he only hit the stops in Arizona, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
I think he was only Arizona, and I think they're waiting to see like who's kind of tacked on to the next ones.
Yeah.
Um, And yeah, we're also working on bringing some creators to the next one. So we're just super
Ooh.
stoked on this tour. And like we get kind of an ear to the ground with this interview of like hearing what it was like and what really was hitting with people. So I just love it. And there's tours popping up all over the place. Different people are doing them. I think it's a good idea in the town
All
halls.
right. That's a great lead in. Let's go ahead and listen to the interview. When we come back on the other side, I'm just going to read us out on do an outro and say goodbye to all of you. So basically when the interview is over, we're not going to have more commentary. It's just going to be Greg Casar, 35-year-old, super exciting, rising star representative from U.S. representative from Congress, leading a caucus of 111 people. That's roughly half of the entire Democratic caucus in the House. And here he is giving his firsthand insights about the anti-oligarchy tour and what Democrats can do right now in order to try and stop the destruction of Trump and Musk and the Republican Party.
Thank you
Yeah,
for being here. Welcome to the show.
of course. Thank you for having me.
First up, we want to chat about this anti-oligarchy tour because you were on the ground. I've only seen clips and it looked electric, so I just want to hear kind of from you what that energy was like and what people are mobilizing around and what's really resonating with folks.
Yeah, I mean, just to sort of set the scene here, right? Like we all know that the response, the grassroots pushback and mobilization to Trump's second election, we like didn't know when or how it was going to come. You know, it was like the morning after Trump was first elected 8 years ago that, you know, the streets of places like Austin were shut down for days with people marching and speaking out. And we have to be honest with ourselves, right? That didn't materialize quite that way. And people started asking themselves, you know, is this going to happen? And I think the answer very clearly after this last week and the Fighting Oligarchy tour is that the answer is yes, here it is. And now the question is, how do we channel it? How do we use it in this grassroots mobilization and encourage it to stop some of the worst abuses by Trump in the short term? And how do we use it to win the electoral change we need? And the energy, it's real, but it's different from 8 years ago. Because people are not just shocked that Trump won, they're really upset that we let him win again. They're upset about everything that is happening and worried about like where their leaders are going to be on making this shift. And so I went and joined Bernie and AOC for the last stop of their tour. They said, you know, it's Tucson, great city, great place, smaller than Phoenix. We're going to put it in the high school gym and hopefully fill it up.
What high
you know, maybe
school?
Catalina High School.
Is
Yeah,
that
so
where
I
you
grew
went,
up in
Kristian?
Tucson. No, I didn't go to County, but I grew up in Tucson. So
so you grew up around
thank
there.
you.
Also, I landed and had a Sonoran dog immediately.
Whoa.
You
Yeah,
know,
you get it.
yeah. So we were, so the trip started out right. Had my Sonoran dog, went to Catalina High School, ready to give my speech to hopefully a couple thousand people. And once we were like 5 blocks away from the high school, we just saw this long parade of people. And the streets were parked up, but you don't know like what's going on.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, we must be right by the high school. And I look at the Google map and we're like 5 blocks away. So
Yeah.
the line to get into the event didn't just wrap around the school. It didn't just wrap around the block. It was blocks and blocks and blocks long. 23,000 people showed up. I mean, in a city of,
Incredible.
Kristian, you're from there, it's maybe about 500,000 people live around there.
Yes, correct.
23,000 people, biggest rally that anybody knows of in Arizona history. And nobody at the rally was running for office. There isn't even an election anytime soon, right? Like the biggest rally anybody had known of in Arizona before this was like a week before the election when you had Kamala Harris and Tim Walz who were running for president of the United States. And so the energy was real. people wanted to know how they could get put to work. And
Mhm.
half the people that showed up, and actually, I think in the case of Tucson, even more than that number, weren't on anybody's lists, right? They came out because they heard that something was going on. And people, um, um, want to act collectively and stop what they see happening in this moment. And I'm happy to talk about it, but I just see a real moment where progressives can be on the rise again, but we can't screw it up and make it short term like in the past by thinking we can win just with the people currently in our tent. There's such an opportunity to expand that tent
Yeah.
because people are just upset about the richest man on earth plundering their government and taking their rights and their stuff and their money. And that's a uniting message, I think, that can bring people that may disagree on this social issue or that one.
Totally. And as someone who works online and kind of more digital strategies, I'm seeing clips and not only from the tour, but I think in general, you and the leaders of the Progressive Caucus are really resonating with people online in ways that others in the party just are not. So I'm curious what's working there too, and why you think that is, and how we can kind of continue to uplift you all, because it's so necessary, and we need those leaders right now.
Well, I think that the biggest divide right now in the party isn't between necessarily who's most progressive or who's tacks most to the center. It's really between those people that want to stand and fight and those that want to roll over and play dead.
Mm,
And the voters overwhelmingly don't want to see people roll over and play dead.
yep.
And when I say roll over and play dead, people might think I'm making a straw man argument, saying like, oh, well, make it not being fair to people that disagree with me in this. But the strategy roll over and play dead was literally printed in big black typeface on the top of the New York Times op-ed pages by some of the most well-renowned and respected Democratic strategists
Yeah.
in the country, who said what we should do is not try to fight back, just have the Republicans own it all, and we'll just naturally swing back and win. And to me, I think that it could be a strategy for retaking the majority, but that's not a strategy for remaking a party. It's not a strategy for inspiring folks. It's certainly not a strategy for ever being able to win a contested presidential election, given the kind of media and social media environment we're in.
Mhm.
And it's not what our voters want. And so at these rallies, people want to see us stand up and fight. So I think progressives, not just ideologically, but also
Right.
just kind of our inside stuff, have been usually much more committed to fighting. Because for me, it's not just about the next election, it's about protecting
Right now.
people now. And I think if we organize and inspire people to say, if you speak out and get 3 Republicans out of the over 200 of them in Congress to break with Musk and Trump, we can actually stop the bad things that are happening to people right now.
Hmm.
That's what's inspiring people right now. It's not like the movement 8 years ago, where progressive members or progressive organizations are standing out by taking a position that's like to the left of the typical policy window. It's more that people that are speaking out about the urgency of now and organizing now versus telling our own voters, hey, calm down. It's not as bad as you think, or it's not as bad as I say, but just come vote again in a year and a half. Like, that is not working,
Right.
No, and I think
nor
I think
should it
you're
work.
no, you're raising some really important points, and I think it, the tour itself, right? You're seeing this energy, but how do you take that back through the work that you're doing with the Progressive Caucus more broadly? And how does that play a role in strengthening the overall Democratic brand, right? How do we make this thing stick, to your point, when there's so much energy out there from voters?
So right. I'm just one member of Congress, but I was elected chairman of the Progressive Caucus. We have nearly 100 members of Congress in the caucus. And traditionally, right, these caucuses, we work on our inside legislative game, right? How are we voting on Bill A or Bill B? And that's really important. We work a ton on that. But right now, we're basically voting against everything because it's all horrible. So, but I don't want to limit the Progressive Caucus to just doing that. Right now, people want to see us out there in the streets, at rallies, hosting town halls in Republican members' districts. They want to see us doing something. And so we're using the Progressive Caucus as a organizing vehicle for going and doing something. And, I think that there was a lot of punditry trying to blame progressive values for our losses at the polls. I think that some of that is wrong and cynical and self-serving from some big corporate interests. But I do think that it is completely fair and right for us to say the Democratic Party has lost its brand as the party of working class people and has lost the trust of far too many working class people. And the question we should be asking ourselves is, how do we win that back? And Progressive Caucus members have usually been unafraid of calling out the Elon Musks and Mark Zuckerbergs and Jeff Bezoses of the world, have more often been for the kind of bold policies that you can have anybody understand and aren't so technocratic and incremental that, like, even if you do it, who knows or cares if you did it. And so we're trying to lean into that part of the Progressive Caucus, push ourselves out there into the public and into the fight so that it's interesting and people hear our messaging. And I'm using the caucus as a place to say, and we should recognize that on some of the issues where we're not the most popular yet, we can make sure that vulnerable people aren't being thrown under the bus, but that our emphasis really needs to be on the everyday voter and working class people. Otherwise, we'll never win elections. And if we don't win elections, then we can't take care of the vulnerable people that our values call us to take care of.
So this is really important what you're raising here, because I actually want to take you back to when you first won your election in Austin. That night, you came out and gave a speech. I was there with Tori Gavito and Jose Garza and a bunch of folks. We saw it, and I thought I had a lot of pride because you are a Latino, right? And you've done this incredible work. Uh, we've lost ground with Latinos in this last election cycle. And so you, both in your work as a member of Congress, but you as who you are in your Latinidad, like how do we get them back? What do we need to do?
I mean, Latino voters are overwhelmingly working class voters. So as we've lost more working class voters and rural voters, we've lost Latino voters. And at the end of the day, we can be for civil rights and the economy both. And that's kind of how it always was in the civil rights movement, right? The march on Washington was the march for jobs and freedom. And so hammering in an economic message and making that the core of the progressive movement and the core of what the Democratic Party stands for is what it's got to be all about. And I had a sense, frankly, well before Vice President Harris lost the presidential election, that that's where we were headed. I actually went and spent a week in Nevada right at the beginning of early voting. So left Texas, left my own district at the beginning of early voting to go campaign for the vice president. And I spent all day and dinners and breakfasts with Latino voters in different cities in Nevada. And one time really stood out to me. I was in a group of about 40 Latino construction workers in a variety of trades. And so many of them said, look, me and my family, or me and my coworkers, or me and my union brothers and sisters, we voted for Hillary, we voted for Joe, but I just don't know whether we're all going to vote for Harris this time. And when I asked one of them that, who was like, I'm definitely not voting for Harris this time, but I voted the other times and I'm done and sick of it. When I asked him why, he said, well, I feel like y'all are focused on other stuff other than my job, other than my livelihood. And even though Trump sucks, I know he cares about building stuff. Now, honestly, right, of Joe Biden's accomplishments, the infrastructure build and building stuff, is like his thing.
Yes.
But that's important. But it's not that this voter is wrong. It was important to understand where he's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, so you feel like we're just focused on other things? And he said, yeah, other stuff. I was like, well, like what? And he didn't exactly want to answer. And so I said to him what so many men have to sometimes say to each other. I was like, so you think we're focused on gay stuff? And he said, yeah, like I think that's your primary area of work. And then I kind of got taken back to my labor organizing days before I was ever a city council member, where we organized tons of people that disagreed on many issues. And I said to this voter, like, hey, my position is what it is, and I stand for equal rights for all people, no matter who they are and who they love. That's my position. But the number one thing that I think we should be working on and work on is to make sure that no matter who you are, your job is year round and you don't have to burn through your savings because there isn't construction for a few months. And that when you get sick, that you should be able to still get paid and not have to burn through the little bit of savings that you've got. And that the billionaires building these buildings that are developers should actually have to pay their fair share in taxes and pay you a decent wage. That's fundamentally the main thing that I work on and that I think most Democrats are working on and should work on. And he said, well, then, yeah, I would vote for that. You know, he said, even though I might disagree with you on some of the social issues, I would vote for that. And so there's that opening to change both our message and our substance to make those working class issues the very forefront of what we do. Because on those construction sites where I was organizing back 10 and 15 years ago, we had guys on those sites that came from all sorts of different backgrounds, that spoke different languages, that disagreed more than you could ever imagine. But when we said what's bringing us together is we're all going to fight for a raise, and that the guys at the top are taking home way too much money for the basically no amount of work they do compared to the 12 sevens that you put in here on this construction site, that gets everybody in agreement. And I think that's kind of the Democratic Party that we used to be, that we need to bring back.
Do you have immediate things right now in terms of an economic message that you think like need to be pushed ASAP? In terms of like an actual vision and tangible things people kind of can latch on to and say, oh, Democrats want to do this for me.
Yeah, we also have to have a positive vision, right? And a positive vision that you should make the money that you're worth and that you're working hard. You should be able to make a fair day's pay for your work. That healthcare should just be an immediate human right. You don't have to be on the phone for freaking hours just for somebody to tell you no so that they can make more money. And like that you should be able to retire in dignity and your kids should turn out economically better than you. And we're going to fight like hell to make that happen. But here's the thing. There's a few problems with this theory. One is, with the words I just said to you, we could pay a ton of money to a pollster. They'll run them and tell you it's overwhelmingly popular with everybody. So why don't Dems win? Why don't Dems just say that and win? Well, part of it is you could say the right words, but if nobody hears you, who cares?
Yeah.
And so we have to be actually interesting and not boring and tedious or self-righteous about it. And we got to be able to tell a story. I mean, the Republicans, they pick a villain, they put color on it, right? Trump, during his State of the Union, talked about a specific volleyball player, trans volleyball player, named them by name. I mean, in my view, it's sick and horrible for them to be picking on this person. But the reason he's doing it isn't because he's stupid. It's because he knows it draws attention. And if Democrats aren't willing to say it's Elon Musk stealing your money in order to enrich himself, Democrats have to be willing to say it's big tech and big pharma that are causing inefficiency and taking your money. That hasn't typically been what we've been willing to do. Right. So people have to hear the message. It has to be interesting. And I think it has to be far reaching enough that it would make a real difference in people's lives. I guess one example I've been thinking about and obsessing over a little bit lately is, imagine if President Biden had said in the first weeks of his presidency, we're going to pull every kid out of poverty in this country, but you guys have to make me. And let's say that thousands and thousands of people marched and there was a debate on the House floor and people were demanding it. And he was pitching why it was important to do. And that there was a big fight. And then in the Senate, they tried to filibuster it, but they rammed it through and it passed. And it was the Pull Every Child Out of Poverty Act. And then everybody got checks and he signed them. I think that, we would have won re-election on that alone.
Yeah.
We did pass a child tax credit that did pull countless kids out of poverty, but then it went away. And tons of people didn't really have an awareness that we did it. And a lot of people didn't have awareness that it was gone. Because if it's not a fight, if there's not organizing around it, if you don't have a lead communicator saying the message over and over, then that vacuum gets filled by the Trumpists and by the cynical people and by right-wing media. And they say that it's immigrants that are driving up the cost of living, that it's queer folks that are ruining your healthcare, instead of us being able to say, no, it's Wall Street hedge fund that's buying up your neighborhood and jacking up the rent. No, it's a giant insurance company that's screwing up your healthcare. But
Yeah.
if we just wind up continuing to think we just need to figure out what the right message is exactly on the left-right continuum to magically win, then I
Mhm.
think we'll keep getting screwed like the way we've been getting screwed.
I agree. We have so much material to use too. I'm like, can we whip something up here? Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here, for sharing your insights and also your experience on the tour and everything. We're super excited about all of it. And just thank you for the work that you do and hang in there. I know it's absolutely insane right now.
It is totally insane. But the last thing I'll say is I think it's a huge moment of opportunity if we channel this energy that's out there right now. In the short term, if we channel the energy that we
Yeah.
saw on the tour, we can pressure three Republicans to break and we can save Medicaid as we know it, save Social Security as we know it, and so much more. In the medium term, if we channel that energy right, we flip the House, which would be huge.
Yeah.
Um, Republicans didn't go and tell their voters, hey, chill out, stop marching and calling when Biden was president. We need to encourage our people to keep doing what they're doing. And then in the longer term, I think it's an opportunity to have a Democratic Party that can really win in big ways. Back in the day, FDR held together a big coalition by saying we got to break the unholy alliance between corporate greed and corrupt government. I think the Democratic Party have been stubborn to take that mantle back on. But now I think in the moment of desperation, we have a real chance to. So thanks so much to everybody listening and everybody over at Way to Win for
Yeah.
hearing
Let
me
us know
out.
how we can help. We're ready.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.
Okay, that is going to do it for us today. That's a wrap. Thank you so much, especially to Congressman Greg Casar for joining us today, bringing his insights to our listeners, to us. Thank you, of course, to Maddie Medved and to Kristian Ramos for helping me put together this interview and this episode. And thank you, of course, always to our listeners. This is why we do it. We do it for you. You guys make us relevant. And please go ahead and tell people if you like what we're doing here, tell people, rate and review us. We have, of course, our podcast, Charting the Way Forward. We have a Substack, Parting the Way Forward. You can follow us on Blue Sky. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves. Go ahead, reach out, make local connections, make sure you have a good support system right there in your locale where you live that you can count on in tough times because we are surely going to encounter them and we are already encountering them. But until next week, when, by the way, we're probably going to have some focus group sound from new focus groups we've been doing. Please join us for that because they're very interesting. And I've just been listening to some of them. So we are excited to bring those to you, I think, next week. But until then, do good, be well, hug your loved ones, and tell your dog I say hi.